Recycling and nature meet in the whimsical creations of today's featured artist. Her expressive birds and decorative insects, assembled from long discarded items, look as if they've come from the pages of some 19th century explorer's notebook. Working with ceramics and found objects, she makes the very old look very new. On today's edition of Art Now, we'll look at the work of Sarah Keenan-Jones.
Hi, welcome to Art Now, a program where we talk to artists whose work is part of our community. I'm Pat Sammann, and I'll be your host. Our guest today is Sarah Keenan-Jones, an artist who works with ceramics and found objects. Sarah was born in Australia, and she has a Bachelor of Fine Arts from the National Arts School in Sydney. Her works have won awards from the Sabia Gallery and the Australian Ceramics Association, and they have been exhibited in Sydney, Rome, London, and New York. In 2012, Sarah moved to Champaign-Urbana, where her pieces have been shown at Indigo and the Boneyard Art Festival. Sarah, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Pat. It's great to be on the program.
Okay, I'm going to start with the question of what motivated you to become an artist. I know your path wasn't straightforward, as for 7 years you were working as a social worker with homeless women in Sydney.
That's correct, yes. My path wasn't exactly straightforward.
Right.
But I've always been interested in art, and I've always enjoyed making things from a young age. Mm-hmm. And in high school I tried to take as many creative subjects as I possibly could. And I actually planned to study something creative at a tertiary level when I left school. Mm-hmm. And I did, in fact, do that. I started out doing design. But after a semester, I really decided I didn't like it, and I didn't really like the whole art school scene. So I decided to do something completely different, which was social work, which was also something that I was interested in as well. It had been a toss-up between design and social work, so I went with the social work. But while I was studying the social work degree, I wasn't practicing any art at home, and I really missed it. So when I completed the degree, it was about 6 months until after I finished the degree that I decided that I really needed to go back to art school. Yeah. And I remember I had a job in social work at the time, and I resigned from the job and told my colleagues why I was leaving, and they thought I was a bit crazy to go back to art school.
I'm sure.
Yes. So anyway, I ended up going back to art school, and one of the other reasons I decided to do that was because I had discovered this great art school in Sydney, the National Art School, which is a very traditional art school. The teaching methods are very traditional, and drawing is a foundation skill that they teach. They view that as being very important. Yeah. And it's a beautiful school. It's located in the old Sydney jail, and it's one of the oldest art schools in Australia.
Wow, that's great. I know much of your work depicts birds and insects. What draws you to those as inspirations?
Well, birds have been a theme that I've been working with for quite some time, since I was at art school. And I just really love animals, but I found that I particularly enjoyed drawing birds. I find that I can give them change their gestures and characteristics to give them human expression, and they're just fun to draw. But I know that birds are actually very popular, and that their popularity has been the butt of many jokes on shows such as Portlandia. Put a bird on it, so I'm not unaware of the fact. But I think that birds resonate with people, and people really enjoy them. Yeah. And I just happen to like drawing them, so that's why I work with birds. As far as insects go, I was first introduced to insects by a friend who has an entomology collection. And I remember years ago when she showed me her collection on the walls of her lounge room, and at the time I just thought that was a bit strange and macabre, but also beautiful. So that got me thinking, and I actually started to collect insects for her as well when I saw them at flea markets. But then taxidermy became a huge trend in the design world, and still is. So I thought it would be kind of fun to play off that popularity, the popularity of dead creatures and animals, and create my own oversized insects in paper form.
Right. Yeah, and we will be seeing some of those shortly. Okay, when you studied at the National Art School in Sydney, you majored in ceramics, so we're going to first look at some of your ceramic work. These first pieces are porcelain cups. This first one is bird beaker. Did you have anything you wanted to mention, say?
Well, I just recall making this work, and the work's made out of porcelain, and I really enjoyed the contrast of the blue line on the white surface and the stark contrast that creates. Yeah, so the vessels became a blank canvas for me to draw on.
Right. This next one is Bubo 1 and 2. They're kind of cute.
They are. Love owls.
And then this one is also Grumpy Owl.
Yes.
That's pretty good.
It's got lots of personality.
I know you've said that your art school really emphasized drawing as a foundation skill, and I think you can see that in this treatment you've done for the cups.
Yes, and I hadn't actually put that connection together before you mentioned it, but I think that there is something there in it. Yeah, because drawing was such an important skill. Right.
Okay, now these next ceramic pieces we're going to look at are a little more sculptural. This first one is Decoy, and this kind of has some of the traits of those earlier porcelain cups. And this is also porcelain. Okay. Anything you want to say about that? Or?
No,
okay.
That's fine.
This one is Bird. I really like this one. It's just seems kind of innocent and cheery.
Thank you. Yes, he was inspired by a Pablo Picasso painting of some doves.
Yeah. Okay, this is Cavallone, which is Italian for horse.
That's correct.
Right.
That's right. Very good.
Okay, and this one is in terracotta.
Yes.
I think the terracotta kind of gives it a more ancient feel. It sort of seems like something from way back.
Yeah, I'm glad you've noticed that actually, because that is exactly where I gained my inspiration from. I've spent a lot of time living overseas and a lot of time in European museums looking at Greek and Roman pottery. So that was certainly the influence there. I particularly enjoyed looking at Greek and Roman sculptures, 3D sculptures of animals, and I've also been influenced by a lot of folk ceramics, particularly Mexican, Scandinavian and Russian.
Right.
So that was absolutely the connection there.
Right. Okay, and this next one is Piebald, and that's also in terracotta.
Yes, so again, that was I got the inspiration for that work from the Russian ceramics that I saw in the Scandinavian ceramics.
Oh, okay.
I found a lot of carved wood, bowls, Viking bowls.
Yeah, I can kind of see that now that you mentioned the Scandinavian part of it. Okay. When you moved to the U.S. in 2012, you stopped working with ceramics and began using paper and recycled materials. Can you say a little bit more about how that change came about?
Okay, so I had a studio in Sydney before I moved to the US, and I actually rented a shed in a friend's backyard. So this friend of mine was quite elderly, and she had practiced ceramics herself for many years. And sadly, she passed away. So her home was sold, and the shed was actually bulldozed.
Oh, gee.
So I had no access to the studio anymore. But I had a show coming up. I had an exhibition to make work for. So another friend of mine let me use some space in her backyard as well, in her garage, and that allowed me to make work for this particular exhibition that I had coming up. And then shortly after that, I had a baby, and then we moved to the US. And for a number of months, art was sort of the last thing on my mind after having a baby. But we moved into an apartment here in Champaign, and it just wasn't appropriate to be working in ceramics anymore because it's not really something you can do in the home. It can be quite toxic, and the dust and chemicals aren't really appropriate for a domestic space. So I had to think of an art form that I could practice at home around my son's naps. So I went back to the foundation skill of drawing and using paper.
What are the differences you find in how you work with the two different kinds of materials, ceramic versus found objects and recycled materials?
There's a huge difference, I find. So I really love working with clay, but it's such a process-driven art form So, for example, you really need to be aware of the way clay reacts to air and how it dries out.
Okay.
So I would find that I really needed to monitor the drying process when I was making my work. Yeah, so for example, if the work dries out too quickly before you finish making it, the work is completely ruined and all that hard work goes to nothing.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, if the work isn't drying out fast enough, it can be a problem too with sculptural work, because you need a certain amount of drying for the sculpture to support its own weight. So I found that when I was working with ceramics, I really had to be in the studio on a regular basis, and I couldn't just leave the work for weeks on end. I had to get in there and make sure everything was going okay. So that's one issue. But another issue with ceramics, which is quite frustrating, is the risk involved with things breaking.
Yeah.
So that is always a problem.
Right.
Things can just so easily break in your studio,
Right.
and then in the firing process, things often don't work out the way you expect.
Right.
Sometimes that's a magical thing, and it can be fantastic, and sometimes things just get destroyed when they're fired.
Right.
So these are the issues I don't have to deal with in working with paper, which is quite refreshing.
Okay, your first paper works were repurposed paper on cotton, and we're going to look at a few of those. This first one is the Fiery Hunter.
Yes, and we've just got that one behind us here.
Okay, if you can just point that one out.
Yeah,
right there.
just to see.
And that one's 13 by 18. Anything you want to say regarding that particular one?
Not particularly. Just that he's made out of old stamps, and I've also got some old maps, and then the pages of old books that I've painted to incorporate it into the orange theme.
Right. Okay. The next one is the Many Plume Moth, and we have that right in back of us.
That's right.
And this one is a little bit larger. This is 22 by 17. It's just beautiful.
Thank you. He's the most popular insect that I've made, actually. Everyone seems to be drawn to him. Yes.
And these are made of maps?
They're all maps. They're all old maps. And I've just chosen a variety of different shades. And then I don't know if you can see, but I've used a hole punch to punch the ends of his wings.
Oh, okay.
So that in his shadow, there's a bit of light.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Coming through.
Okay. Next one, which we have right here, is Dragonfly. That's 14.5 by 11. That's really quite striking.
Yes. I made that for a friend of mine, and she really loves green. So green and blue. So
right. I was going to say that the green and blue theme definitely comes through.
Yes, it does.
Okay. And then this one is Housefly.
Yes, I'm not judgmental about insects, so houseflies aren't a very desirable insect to have in the home. But I just choose my insects based on the shapes and their forms rather than whether they're poisonous or ugly.
Well, that's fairly attractive for a housefly.
Yeah, he's doing okay.
And then this last one is Honeybee. Okay. These insect images kind of harken back to the 19th century. How did you get interested in that era?
I like that you've noticed that link, because there is something quite Victorian about the insects, and I suppose that's probably because the Victorians liked to collect things, and taxidermy was a really big trend back then. And I am interested in the 19th century, but I'm also interested in a lot of different time periods. So I think the reason for that is possibly my parents. They really love antiques, and they are avid antique collectors.
Okay.
And we often went to a lot of antique shops on our family holidays. So as a child, I did spend a lot of time in antique stores. So that's probably where it comes from. But also, as I mentioned, we have travelled a lot, and I have spent a lot of time in museums across the world, and whenever we go to a new city, we always try and find the local museums. So I have been exposed to a lot of artefacts from different cultures and different periods of time.
Yeah.
But my husband's also an archaeologist,
Oh,
so
yes.
I have spent a lot of time on ancient sites and in archaeological excavations.
Yeah.
And I think that has had a very strong influence on me as well.
Sure.
Yes.
I wanted to ask how you approach creating a piece from recycled items. Do you start with a general idea of the image you want to make, or do the materials themselves kind of suggest a direction to you?
I think usually I come up with the concept and then try and incorporate recycled materials into that. But it's a very natural process for me because I am such a huge fan of recycled materials, and I love things that are old and secondhand. So it's not deliberate in a sense. I don't have to push it.
Yeah.
But sometimes I will come across an unusual object or a beautiful object, and I'll try and think of a way that I can use it in an artwork or give it new purpose or new life.
Right. Okay, many of your most recent pieces are recycled paper on canvas, with the paper being either newsprint or book pages. So we're going to look at a few of those now. This first one is 3 birds, and this is 12 by 12 for each.
Yes, that's right.
I know you have a mix of words from the repurposed paper. That the paper here includes a dictionary, maps, and sewing pattern instructions. How do those relate to the subject?
Well, sometimes they don't relate at all, actually.
Okay, sure.
I do like using words in my work. I think it's fun. And often the words aren't related, but sometimes they are. So, for example, I did create some work for a friend recently, and I intentionally chose the words for the work. So I deliberately picked out the names of countries where she'd lived or visited, so that it was special for her.
Yeah.
But yeah, often it's random. I often like to use words from other languages. So with some of the sewing patterns, I found that you can find patterns with multiple instructions in different languages, and I really like it when I can come across that.
Okay, this next one is called The Londoner. Is there a reason why this particular one is a Londoner?
Yes, it was for the friend who lives in London.
Ah,
so
okay.
That's why it's named
Great.
Londoner. Yeah.
Okay, this next one, which is a little bit larger, is 16 by 20, is Tyto Alba. Very impressive owl.
He is. He's very big. He sits above my son's crib. And yeah, my son really likes the owl. He's into owls too.
I was curious, there's some words just above his back. What are those?
I can't see it from here. They're just the instructions from the sewing pattern.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't recall what they say.
And then we have Charmed, and the one after this is going to be Charmer. Did you do those both at the same time?
I did. There were actually a series of 3.
Okay.
And 2 of them are in the exhibition here. Yeah, but as you can see, there's a dart from the sewing pattern there, and I do like the arrows and the different shapes that come up in sewing patterns.
Okay, and as I said, this is Charmed and this is Charmer.
Yes, so he's got a nice big arrow in the back.
Okay, this one is called It's News to Me. I thought that was really cute. Okay, this one is The Bearer. And this last one is Pigeon Pair. Okay, recently your work was exhibited at Indigo as part of the Hatch exhibition. Have you found Champaign-Urbana to be a good place to work with recycled materials?
Champaign-Urbana is fantastic for that. Number one, it's a great place to find recycled materials, and I also feel that the community is really receptive to artwork that uses recycled materials. So it's been wonderful for me, and it's a great place to source materials.
Great. I know, I wondered where you find some of the older materials you use. I know you have some things that go back to the late 1880s and 90s.
That's right. So actually the Idea Store is where I bought that particular item you're talking about. It was a 19th century magazine or newspaper. They were just shards of newsprint. And I was so foolish. I came across it and I just bought about 5 pieces. There was more there. I didn't for some reason I didn't buy the lot.
Yeah.
And then when I came to my senses and went back, of course it had
It was
sold.
gone.
So that was
Right.
that was a bit silly. But the other place where I get the really old material is in Europe. When I've travelled, we lived in Italy for a while, and I used to go to the flea markets every weekend. And there was a man who sold old letters and Victorian postcards, 19th century postcards.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a bit of a collection going.
That's great.
Yep.
Okay, you're currently showing some of your latest work in a show called Winging It at the Anita Purves Nature Center in Urbana, which is actually where we are right now. Tell us a bit about how you got involved with the center and what's going to be shown.
Okay, so I became involved with the Anita Purves Nature Centre when I met Judy Miller at a Boneyard Art Festival mixer. And I had some of my insects with me, and she really liked them and thought that they would be appropriate for the centre because of the environmental theme. So that's how it all got started.
Okay.
So the show Winging It features 2 bodies of work that I've created since I came to the US. So I've got the insects and also the birds.
Okay. For other artists who might want to display their work at the center, the Urbana Park District is looking for artists who draw inspiration from local parks and natural centers. The works must be 2-dimensional, and up to 40 can be shown at a time. They are displayed in the center's classroom hallway. The center will help promote the show and will hold an opening reception, as well as assist with sales. 10% of sales go back to the Urbana Park District's environmental programs. Any artists who are interested in exhibiting at the center should contact Environmental Program Manager Judy Miller at 217-384-4062 or at jkmiller@urbanaparks.org. Sarah's show, Winging It, will run through April 30th. Please come out and see it. And unfortunately, you're going to be leaving Champaign-Urbana in May. I'm sorry to hear that.
We are leaving in less than 2 months, that's right.
And you're going back to Australia, right?
We are. We're going back to Australia, and we've had such a lovely time here in Champaign-Urbana. So we'll dearly miss all our American friends, and I've become quite fond of the town too. So we'll reflect on this time as being very special.
Okay, well, thanks again for being here and
Thank
letting
you.
us talk about your work.
Thanks so much, Pat.
We hope you've enjoyed today's show, and we also hope it will inspire you to explore the local art scene and to make your own art now.